So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. Today we're here in Rum Air, and I'm joined by Ali and will you pronounce the name properly? It's Eva from NUS, and also our sports officer Hamza, and
big up.
And it's myself, Fez Ilyas, your student affairs officer. Today we're going to be talking about the Active Students project that's being run by NUS and how that sort of developed into Bradford's Your Turn program. So let's kick it off. Ali, thank you for joining us. What is the Active Students project?
Thank you for having me. It's always really exciting to be at Bradford. The Active Students project started really at the beginning of this year, but it was the culmination of work that we had done last year. And one of my main priorities has been, and one of my big passions in my time in the student movement within my own union and then onto NUS, was getting more people participating in sports clubs. I felt like, often there was a lot of students all across the country that felt like, for whatever reasons, couldn't engage in sports clubs. So last year, my first year as vice president at the National Union of Students, we conducted a big research project that looked at why particular students don't participate in sports, what's the barriers to their participation, and how can individual students' unions overcome that. Because for me, it was that big impact. How can we actually get impact on the lives of day-to-day students on your campuses here in Bradford and across the country? And a big part of it we found was that students from different backgrounds and different cultures and different upbringings found particular barriers to engaging in sports clubs, everything from costs to cultural barriers to religious barriers and all that kind of thing. At the beginning of this year, we were fortunate enough to enter a partnership with Sport England, and that partnership was about, okay, now that we have some of the data, some of the information, we've really delved into the research pieces of how we overcome these barriers. How can we actually support student unions in running projects that smashes these barriers and opens up sports for everyone? And so the Active Students project was born. We opened up applications for student unions to apply, so we had a fund available for students' unions to support specific projects that targets people who don't classically participate in sports clubs. And we received a wealth of really, really fantastic applications, of which Bradford was one, particularly really, really good and exciting work that could be done in Bradford. And so we are now in the midst of actually running these projects. And the most exciting thing for me is, when I say running, this is high impact front end stuff.
Yeah.
This project means that there are students all across the country on the ground who will now participate in sports clubs who otherwise wouldn't have participated, will make friends, will create a family on their campuses, and it may help them stay in education. It may help them, gain skills that they wouldn't have otherwise gotten. So really high impact, really exciting projects all across the country, of which Bradford is one.
Yeah, so let's hear from Hamza. Hamza, well done on your massive effort in sort of winning this bid as well, and bringing such a great project to Bradford. Can you tell us about it? You call it Your Turn.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful first and foremost for Ali and the team to come down and actually accept Bradford as one of the proposals as well, because I remember when I came in as Sports and Wellbeing Officer, this was one of the first things I heard from the NUS conference in Birmingham, and it just came as a kind of shock to me as well. It's like, you can now start a social physical activity program on your campus, and the interest that was there at NUS was massive. There's so many people asking questions, raising their hands up, and I was just sat there thinking, yo, how am I going to do this? How is this going to get done? So obviously collaborating with UBU staff, whether it was you, whether it was Kieran or whoever it was, Alicia, etc., just to literally just put pen to paper and then just think about it. While I was at Books as well, I got a lot of ideas from the Books conference, which was 1 week after NUS, because them guys this year, they've sort of changed their mindset. They're focusing much more on social sport, so it's much more of a sort of encouragement to myself as well, to go out there and to put a good proposal in, to sort of tick all the boxes, reach out to Bradford College, the local community as well, and try and get this done. And it's been really good so far.
Yeah. How many people have you got participating in it now?
So far, so I'll run through the activities then.
Yeah, go
first
on,
foremost, if that makes sense. So I've just got a list of them here. So we got Tai Chi, all female Tai Chi on Mondays 12 till 1. Then we got self-defense on Wednesdays 5 till 6. And then we're starting another boxing session for females, which is at the Bradford College gym. with the female boxing instructor there, who's actually level 3 as well. That's going to be starting in 2 weeks' time. That's going to be 3 till 4 at Bradford College. And then we've also got the current boxing session, which is at 1:15 till 2:30 at Bradford College gym. And then we've got cycling on Fridays at 2 till 3:30. But then at the same time, we've also organised some hikes as well. Obviously, being in West Yorkshire, I wanted to put it out there that we could do hikes. We could go out and take international female students, because they're the ones that really participate in hikes, because it's such, like, it requires a lot of effort, because we as subs went on hikes at the start of the year, so it requires a lot of effort and a bit of bravery and encouragement as well. Fairs got out of that one, yeah.
Listen, I'm from London, yeah. From the train station to here, for me, was a hike. I'm not used to that kind of stuff.
But like we see, like in previous years, what worked and what didn't. Hikes was something that, you know, we did a mixed hike last year, but it was only females that turned up, and there was about 20 of them, and Michael was really surprised. So we're doing hikes as well. So we've done the Saltaire Shipley hike, we've done the Ilkley Moor hike is next week or in a few weeks on November 21st, and we've got 3 more hikes up until January. So we got Menston to Otley Loop, Skipton, Sharp Hall, and then Ilkley to Crossflat. So Ilkley again is
all
is
these
a
proper
hot spot
scenic places as well.
mad places in West Yorkshire.
You know, people who've not been to Bradford, right, they always like describe Bradford of the experience of the couple of streets they walk through, right? But in reality, like, these are the places around Bradford. This is what makes Bradford. Yes, 100%.
100%.
Yeah. Let's bring in Eva. So what do you think is the importance of running these type of projects throughout the country?
I think that what's happening here is really exciting, and I think that, like, the work last year looking at kind of why people didn't get involved in sport is really, really, like, really good that NUS is doing some work like that. I think when I was an officer, like, a lot that I focused on was women in sport and why women don't participate in sport, and it's actually really interesting when you look at why women don't kind of participate in sport, and how a lot of the time it comes from maybe feeling like uncomfortable in like mixed situations, or like a lot of things around like body positivity, and kind of also like unions just not having opportunities for them. So it's really good to see a union actually focusing on women in sport, because quite often sport is seen as like a men's activity, and like when you think about sport in unions, quite often you might think of like the men's football team or the men's rugby team, and actually kind of putting out female role models is so important. So that's why I think like things like this are really exciting, because you're actually getting women together who then realise they have similar interests and that the sport can be for them. And I think that it kind of ties in with a lot of the work that like Sports England does around like This Girl Can, that really kind of looks down to like break barriers down. And I think a lot of that does come from, like you were saying, like social sport. Because it's not just like when you're at university, unless you go to somewhere that is more specialised, you're not very likely to be doing kind of specialist sport. You're more likely to be doing the social aspects of sport. So being able to kind of drop into sessions is really, really good, because you don't have to make that commitment to like having to practice every week. You can just kind of dip in and out when you want. So it's really exciting to kind of see.
I think earlier this year I was at National Conference, and there was a motion that actually came through from Bradford as well, and it was all around the accessibility of sports. And Eva actually spoke on that motion, and one of the I was gobsmacked to see that there wasn't a single dissenting voice in the room when Eva spoke for that motion, and it passed unanimously in the room, which was
if you know
massive.
NUS is quite a feat.
Yeah.
But it's also exciting because, like, I think like it's really good that Bucks are doing work like this, because even when I was an officer like a few years ago, the conversations weren't being had. Like there were still a lot of conversations around like how we needed to get rid of lad culture, and people being like, oh well, sexism is okay because that's just how it's been. So it's like exciting to see that people are like, hold on, let's change the culture around just always drinking and being like a bit sexist to actually like using sport as something like for social good.
On some issues there's no debate around those issues as well.
One of the principal things that's happened here, which I'm most excited about, is 2 things. One, we have some real high impact stuff front end for students, right? So often people talk about NUS and it's too high level, there's no connectivity to individual students on campuses. Well, we finally have something where we're working in conjunction that has actually touch points with actual students on campuses, so they can, when they ask me the question, what's NUS done for me, if you've participated in one of these amazing projects that Hamza's running, that's been supported by NUS. All the credit goes to Hamza, but at least we were there to support.
Exactly.
And the second part is we have genuinely changed the conversation around the country. Those of us who've been here for a little while will know that, you know, accessibility into sports clubs and making sports clubs open and breaking down the barriers and things like free sport, weren't even being spoken about 3 years ago at NUS level, at the student union level. They were really important for student unions on the ground, because sports have always been really important for student unions on the ground. But we've been able to shift the entire conversation over the last 3 years to make the accessibility into sports a real priority, and that's one of the things I think we can all be proud of.
Where do you think the future of this project will be, and what would you like to see in the future?
So I think one of the things we would be really keen on is to collect the impact, being able to collate, because it's Bradford is running projects. We've got projects all across the country, from University of Arts in London, from Gloucestershire to Staffordshire to Brunel, all of whom are targeting specific cohorts of students, from BAME students to women students like yourselves, to parents and carers. So what I think we'd be really keen to do is, once we've been able to deliver these projects, is to look at the impact that we've had and grow it. Right now we've got a number of unions. There's no reason why we can't grow that, grow our partnership with Sport England, and not only support work that's either funded or supported by NUS, but also really start to encourage student unions to do this work on their own campuses, and look at participation of their sports clubs on their own campuses. And so if we can continue this conversation around making sports clubs more accessible for everyone and breaking down the participation barriers to sports clubs, and hopefully get more universities to understand the value of sports clubs and fund them, i.e. free sport, then it can be a real win. These things happen slowly. It takes 3 or 4, 5 universities, and then you start to see the dominoes fall and the value of sport and the funding into sport. Because every union and university that we've looked at, when they've made sport free, or when they've done real drives to break down participation barriers from cultural to everything else, they've seen nothing but benefits for their university and their unions.
I agree with that.
Hamza, what about you? What do you see the future of your turn being?
Do you know what, while we set up obviously the female social physical activity programs that we've set up, at the same time obviously you want to look ahead to the future as well. You don't want to always rely on this £12,000 that's coming from Sport England and NUS as well. You don't want to rely on that. So one thing that we've managed to do is, as a social physical activity program, is we managed to chat to Unique, which is our gym, commercial services, and to give us access to their muggers, the multi-use gaming areas, from 9 till 5 every day, either play football or tennis or basketball. So I see little political moves like this, like lobbying the right person or speaking to the right people within the university, can sort of break down them barriers as well. So that's where I see the future. Like, if for example
do you see it like a stepping stone to your free sports dream and vision?
Well, 100%, man. I feel as though it's a short-term win for now anyway, but long-term, hopefully the participation data and the stats will speak for themselves. And see how people are reacting to it, see how many people are engaging in it. It speaks for itself.
It's about telling the story, opening people's eyes at the benefits of sports on campuses. Sometimes you think, sports sits somewhere separate, and academic and your university experience is separate.
No, it doesn't.
They're the same thing. I will probably say, in my experience, and I've been around the student movement for 6 years now, different institutions at the, at a grassroots level to the top level, sports clubs keep people in education. So when universities are talking about retention levels, when they're talking about mental health access and community, and actually feeling engaged while you're at university, sports clubs go a long way in doing that. So when Hamza's speaking about free sport, which I actually absolutely commend you on for that being a priority, and something that you'd like to work towards, those have benefits far beyond what people classically think have benefits. So if you can begin to open people's eyes as to the far-reaching impacts of sports clubs, and eventually get to a space where the university and the union and the local community is seriously invested in breaking down the barriers of participation, that's a huge win.
There's also when you look at kind of the Bucks did a survey on employability in sport, and then when you look at what employers ask for, so many of those criteria come from being within a team or a sports team. And actually it goes back to this thing about why would you fund sports in your university, and it's for kind of health reasons and social reasons, but also because it makes you a better more rounded person as well, getting involved in those communities, belonging to a community, but also kind of working as a team, because quite often in university education now, you're kind of often very isolated, or you're doing something for yourself. There's not very
Yeah.
many opportunities to be working as a team, and that's like where like sports and societies can give you that kind of chance to be more kind
Yeah.
of collaborative.
I think we see that like on a regular basis, like just walking around campus today as well. You can see all those social groups developing, and they come from these
Yeah.
sports groups, and they come from these society groups, and everybody coming together. I think Hamza is the first hand witness of that.
There was one student I was chatting to at the start of the day. She wanted to start a female rugby league team as well. I remember chatting to her and talking about employability skills and teamwork and stuff. She goes, she's a mature student, so she's come back to do a law degree basically. She goes, up until I came to university, I've never been rejected one single job because she was a professional, semi-professional rugby league player, for women's rugby league player, and that's literally, it speaks volumes there in itself. Like, they didn't ask her anything else about her experiences in the interview or whatever, except how did you do as a captain of the female rugby league team. But that's at a competitive level as well. So if we can create those sort of friendship groups and those communities like we're speaking through these social sport programs, again, it's big achievements. Like, for example, yesterday the boxing club were down, and one of the females who was on the stall was one of the females that came through the Your Turn program.
Brilliant.
And she was on the stall, and she was there like basically promoting the session that we're starting on Wednesdays in 2 weeks time.
Good
So
stuff.
she was there, so she's literally come through that. She's seen the posters or however she got the information, and she's going to these sessions, and now she's there. She's working with the club as well, which is what my long-term goal is towards the end of the year, is to get the clubs to sort of feed into this program. And if anyone does want to take up competitive sport, they can do through their clubs once they get that confidence.
Ali, what would you say to students that are feeling maybe a struggle to get access to sports or wanting to get involved but maybe feel too shy? What would you say to those students out there?
I'd say that there are a lot of projects like this, really good projects running around the country. The main thing is start to think about engagement in sport differently. You know, if you're looking for if you're coming to university and you're worried about making friends or creating a community around you, or if you're moving city and moving out your house, sports clubs create families all across the country. If you want to pick up skills around things like Eva's talking around employability and leadership and working as a group and things like that, sports clubs provide you that. If you're particularly interested in participating in sports clubs, if you're a football fan, or if you like playing rugby or boxing or even fencing, things like that, all of those opportunities are there, and that you should really, really throw yourself in. And it's not as daunting as people think. Actually, that they can often be a real hub for people when they leave home. And so I would say really take advantage of the opportunities you have on your campuses, and give it a go. You don't always. Often students have the perception that when you participate in sports clubs, it has to be at like an elite bucks level. It absolutely doesn't have to be that.
100%.
You can dip in and out. You can see how it suits you. You can play socially. Just kick a ball around, or just play basketball. It doesn't have to be elite. It doesn't have to be top level. It can be suited towards you and can provide so many benefits. So absolutely throw yourself in.
Eva, do you have any message for our students as well?
I think just back on this, like getting involved. Also, you getting involved will encourage more people to get involved. Like, there's a lot of research that shows that women are more likely to get involved if they see other women who are involved. So, like, if you notice that like a mixed team has become very male, maybe that's because maybe you being involved in that as a woman will encourage more women next year to get involved. And it's around also that the role models. So when it's like small things as well that like unions can do, like when you put up posters about sports events, to use pictures of men or to use pictures of women. And so often people just like will put a picture of a man up and they're not even realizing they're doing it. It's just like a kind of unconscious bias. So like just
subliminal
doing small
messaging.
changes.
Well, that's like one thing that we try to do in our posters as well, and when we send information out there is we tell like the students that want to come, or the Bradford College students that want to come, exactly sort of specify what needs to be worn, what type of shoes you need to wear, so make sure everything's alright, all the information's out there. And then on the posters as well, or anything that we're videoing, just put, rather than one single female, put like a group of females on there as well. Even though with the boxing post there's only one female on there, etc. But with the fitness classes that are coming up, and there's other initiatives as well, try and get like groups of females on them posters as well, just so that it shows that community aspect. So then women are more than likely to join.
So Hamza, what's your message to the students then? How do you want to get them involved?
My message is it's your turn. It's your turn to get involved. Hashtag Yassine came up with that name. But literally, like, it's an initiative that where there's so many activities. Hopefully by the time it's March next year, there'll be 9 or 10 activities running, stuff like swimming, Zumba, cricket, rounders. We're looking at literally all the low level to slightly high level, but for something for everyone to get involved in. Every female on campus should try and get involved with it, and at least just go check it out, go to one session and just see what the vibe is like. I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, guys, for coming down today. I think that's been a good little chat we've had, and I think Ali's joining us again next month to talk about something very different.
Can't get enough of Bradford.
But again, thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate you guys coming down. It's a lot of effort.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan, for recording this talk.